We're a group of Gen Xers learning about our ADHD and neurodiversity later in life. Join us as we discuss interesting clips we find online and how they relate to our own life experiences. Welcome to This Is How My Brain Works.
Hello, welcome everybody to another episode of This Is How My Brain Works. Today it was my turn to share something with you. Well, we'll just get right to it, and we will discuss afterwards. How's about that?
I like it. I like the plan.
Okay.
Just like the format requires us to do.
Just as the parameters.
Hi, my name is John Bosworth. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in St. Pete, Florida. I'd like to talk a little bit about taking an adult attention deficit disorder test or an adult attention deficit hyperactivity disorder test. Basically the same thing. The ADHD refers to more of the impulsivity or the hyperactivity and not just the attention or the concentration problems. With an adult, as well as children, there are two basic tests that we can use from a mental health perspective and in a professional setting. That's the Bender Gestalt, which is a neurobehavioral, neuropsychological test, which assesses many different areas of functioning for the individual. Not only do we get a psychometric score, but the evaluator can also observe and watch how the person is being, how they are interacting with the test itself, so they can observe drawings or how long it takes to complete a certain task. So the Bender Gestalt gives us a kind of comprehensive view, not only of cognitive and attentional things, but neuropsychological and behavioral issues as well. And one of the other testing instruments that I like to use is called the behavioral checklist. And there's the Conners rating scale, and there's some other ones. And there's some other ones actually on the internet. If you click on ADD or ADHD, you'll see that there's a lot of different sites with different testing instruments. But a behavioral checklist usually is completed by somebody that lives with you, either a spouse or a mother or a father or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and maybe somebody in another setting like work or school. And what happens is you can take those two behavioral checklists and kind of compare them and get a score or a more comprehensive picture of what the person's going through, and if there indeed is problems with attention deficit or hyperactivity. So you compile a couple of those testing instruments along with a history and asking a lot of questions of people that interact with the person, and that's how we come up with some of the official diagnosis or actually taking the test. So I want to review. It's the Bender Gestalt is one way to take the test. The Conners rating form or any behavioral checklist is another way of actually getting some important data. Those are ways of taking an adult or taking an adult attention deficit disorder or hyperactivity disorder test. My name is John Bosworth.
Interesting.
Well, let me just tell you, first of all, the very first thing I did was to try and investigate the test, the Bender Gestalt test. I don't know, have you ever heard of it?
I probably have taken it. I don't remember that name.
It's a series of shapes.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But to even get information on it via the internet, as Johnny Bosworth said, is difficult. It's like, can't really get a definitive answer on the situation. My overall interpretation of this video that we just watched is, what is he talking about? How are these tests that were created nearly 100 years ago, parts of these tests were created 100 years ago. Basically, what we're saying is, we don't know anything still. There's a lot out there that we still don't know, that we're using tests from a long time ago, and we're having someone observe you take that test, so we know whether or not you have ADHD or ADD or.
Yeah, when he said that,
That's crazy.
I thought was masking. Like, I'm going to be in there. Like, you guys will never catch me with ADHD if that's how you expect to catch me.
Oh yeah, we've created all kinds of ways to
Weird. Yeah.
pull it over on people.
Now,
Yeah.
maybe if you had caught me after lunch and a bunch of sugar in second grade, maybe then. But even then, I doubt it.
I did one of these tests, Rudy. I went in and it was like, because I was like, my intent was like, are there types of ADHD? And if so, like, what would be mine? And so like what are the exact tools that would be most beneficial to me. And I was pretty shocked at how antiquated I thought a lot of the test was. Like watching me do like recreate a geometric drawing, doing different types of things. I was like, gosh, this doesn't really seem cutting edge.
That sounds a lot like, though, like the gifted and talented test.
It is. It's a
Maybe they're
part
all
of
the same.
Gestalt is a part of the IQ test, as far as I remember.
Oh, it is. I was about to say, like, it just sounds so they just give everybody the same test and see and then diagnose you for a bunch of different things out of it.
I mean,
I bet so.
I don't.
Okay, the Bender Gestalt is a psychological test used by mental health practitioners to assess visual motor functioning, developmental disorders, and neurological impairments in children ages 3 and older and adults. It consists of 9 index cards picturing different geometric designs.
And there it is.
It's one
But
piece
that's not
of it. So
specific to ADHD.
they're trying to assess a certain type of brain function with that, right? And as it relates to gifted and talented or ADHD or neurodiversity, right?
Or yeah,
And some of the terminology and some of the explanations of that Bender Gestalt are brain damage.
Huh.
A term that would not be used today, like we're using this test to see if there's any brain damage. That wouldn't be I don't know, you wouldn't see that term in sort of, my point is it's from ever ago. And as much as they didn't know then, and they tried to put 9, shapes together for you to then look at.
What testing have you done, Rudy, like historically?
None.
Did you do anything?
No written,
when you
no
were
written
younger,
sort of testing.
Okay, but how did they determine? Because when you said when you were grade school age or junior high, like
There was yes, when I was in elementary school, and this I didn't know. My parents were giving me some sort of pill for hyperactivity. I was diagnosed with hyperactivity as a child. But I don't really even remember that. Like I was told way later in life that that was for hyperactivity.
So you don't remember ever like going and talking to someone of them doing some kind of test?
No,
This was all
no,
like just
no,
anecdotal
no.
stuff from your parents.
Either that or they put me under, you know what I'm saying? And then delivered me to the test, and then like in some like weird state, I completed the test, and then like.
And that was his first time on ayahuasca.
Yes.
Well, everything, because I just looked it up, and everything that I'm seeing is it's all, so much of it is
visual.
It's visual. It's like, which means that it's run through someone else's perception of what is happening, right, and someone else's map in their brain and what they consider are too much. Like, listen, I can't tell you how many times in my life people have said to me, "You're too much," and I'm like, I'm just being accurate and clear. Yeah. I'm not too much. I'm just trying to make sure we're drilled down to what the right and wrong answer is. And so
I'm just smarter than you. So why don't you?
That's how I'm sure it comes off. But yeah, I mean, so you have someone who is neurotypical, probably watching a bunch of people but watching their subject and deciding if they are neurodivergent or not through their own lens of what is right, wrong, normal, or not. That seems faulty on a lot of levels to me.
Well, yeah, I was thinking that too when he described the second type of test where they get like people's feedback and all that. It's like, yeah, what lens are you looking at this through, or what are you projecting or personalizing onto this person, and what are your own issues? And
now, I'm sure if we had an expert on who gave these tests, that we would, because that we would be told that it's not quite as nefarious as it sounds right now. But
we don't have the budget.
Of course, there's outliers.
We don't have the budget.
But like what I'm looking at so I'm glad that you brought this, Rudy, because as I was listening to it, I was like, crap, this is a terrible video. I don't know what I'm supposed to think about this. So when you opened with, this is a terrible, well, not terrible video, but just so imprecise. The diagnostic tools this guy is describing are so imprecise and unhelpful as to be harmful almost. And then I immediately thought of current functional MRI stuff that talks about there are really specific differences, a lot of it in the frontal lobe between people who have ADHD and people who don't. So not that everyone wants to go strap in and get a functional MRI of their brain to confirm that the guy watching them who was neurotypical was right that they're ADHD, but it gives me hope that we're going to start to see other types of tests that can triangulate. And kind of going back to Michael's point earlier, wouldn't it be nice to know what flavor of neuroatypicality we each have? So like when we watch our videos, like I see 7 traits and I'm like, ooh, I have those too, but those other 5, that's not me. So what tools do I need, because I have those too, to help me integrate and in some cases mask for the comfort of others, mask for my own process through something because it makes it easier to if I mask.
Getting something done. You're right.
I mean, there's a million ways that we can better harness these skills. So as I was looking at this, and it's like, yeah, of course, functional MRIs are totally different. In fact, the one that caught me the most was misdiagnosis is not uncommon when high IQ and ADHD collide. Very bright children who are also highly active are misdiagnosed. But on the other hand, they can also, ADHD, highly smart kids can hyper-focus on something for several years, such that it looks like they've got focus, which is why my dad, I did not have ADHD because I could hyper-focus. But the other thing that I thought was interesting.
Well, but also because girls are the way ADHD shows up for us all the way through, even when menopause hits, it looks different. And I've gone back and forth like you, Sarah, with, since we've been doing this, I'm like, and finding the videos and whatever, I've literally gone back and forth several times. Nope, I'm ADHD. Maybe I do have ADHD. I never knew that. Nope, I'm autistic. Nope, I'm this. Like the toggle between.
That I found really interesting is ADHD. So the question, like an auto question on Google, is why do ADHD brains work faster? And I thought to myself, mind blown, it's not just me who thinks really fast and have been told I have a fast processor and I need to slow down and let other people catch up. This person says, simply put, ADHD is the brain's inability to produce as much dopamine, serotonin, and adrenaline as regular brains. And because of that, our brains have had to become faster, which I don't even understand. But I do know my brain, like I've been accused of thinking that I need to slow down and let other people catch up. And to finish this little cap, brain scans cannot yet reliably diagnose ADHD. So for as much as I'm excited that this is something that's possible, we're not there yet.
And you've heard of the ADHD, right? It has the A, capital A, then small U, and then D.
Autism, ADHD.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's like a blended thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Did you know ADHD are comorbid as well? Anyone? Epilepsy and ADHD are also comorbid?
What?
Or it might be autism. It's one or the other. I'll look it up.
I've had one seizure in my life, and this was when I was about 42, maybe.
Are you serious?
And I had a tonic-clonic seizure. My wife woke up to me seizing, and we had to
terrifying.
I did all this, went to see this neurologist, and I thought I was like later epilepsy and stuff, and all. It was freaky for a while. Nothing has happened since then, but
ADHD is the most common co-occurring disorder in children with epilepsy.
Wow.
Well, and here's the thing that's really interesting too, is that same test, the same what we're talking about, of having people observe, also is used to diagnose mood disorders, autism, learning disorders, oppositional defiant disorder. I mean, that's an awful lot.
Yeah. Talk about a blanket catch-all test.
Well, here, can I share my screen for a second?
Yeah.
So I found this. It's always kind of, I mean, some of the verbiage is just ridiculous.
An introduction to a what is this like?
Oh, yes. This is the introduction to the Bender Gestalt test.
Okay.
So there's an introduction to it. And I want you to see these designs that wavy line of dots, score 2. For this deviation to be scored, the dots should form a distinctly wavy line. I mean, what is this?
It seems fairly subjective, and then
It's a guy who was probably on some LSD and put some dots and some arrows together and then made up like a game in his own mind. I don't understand. Look, the brain is difficult, right, to understand it as it is. And I'm sure there is some science behind him putting this together. But
don't be so sure.
Okay, I won't.
About the LSD or about the science?
It would be interesting.
Well, the LSD goes without saying. I mean,
can you send me that paper?
Yeah, I'm going to send it. I'll send it.
Looking paper
Again, it's the introduction to the Bender Gestalt.
Well, don't do it
test.
here. Don't do it here. Don't do it here, Jason. No, undo your
I
thing.
apologize.
Go back to
Just go back to don't share Sarah's information. There you go.
Thanks, Hottie. Got my back.
Now you can send it to her.
Part of this test that I took was I had to recreate a geometric design, and it had many, many shapes in there. And it was like, can you recreate this in this amount of time? And so
I can't draw.
Like a circle and a half thing and a triangle over here. And I accomplished the task. Okay. However, their feedback was typically a neurotypical brain would kind of would approach this in this way, where it would be more kind of this logical kind of this quadrant first, because then everything else is attached to that, where I was like, I'll do work on this square over here. Oh, there's a triangle over here. And I was just like all over the place, but I still completed it and it looked like the thing. And then later in the test, they said, can you now recreate that without looking at it? And I essentially did the best I could with that to a passable result. But my approach was just different than what they would typically see someone do.
I would like to know how many neurotypical people, after going through the first part, right, and then the second part, you had to put it back together without. How many of those? I mean, what's the neurotypical way then to put it back together?
Well, this test was interesting because when she was describing each exercise, I was like, I'm going to do awesome at this, or I'm going to bomb this. I just knew that like I am geared toward this, or I'm not geared to this. They're like, can you like see these patterns and do these things? And I'm like, I'm just going to crush this thing. I'm not even gonna have to think. And it's not like this ego thing. It was just like, this is going to be easy for me. Where she says, I'm going to tell you a story and it's going to be, 2 minutes long. And then I want you to tell me that story back to me. And I could remember my recall was just not great. So like, it's like the ADHD, like it just wasn't sticky for me, and I couldn't, and I said, and then I had to go back and then later in the test, try to tell her the story again, even fewer details. And I'm like, I could sit here for the rest of my life.
That's unfair to people of a certain age. That's just unfair.
That's true. But I mean, it is like, okay, do I have the dopamine and the norepinephrine and those things to be able to have that working memory going to have it and be engaged enough to have it be sticky enough for me to have that recall? And
but there is that visual, right? There is that visual part.
There are some things I could have done maybe. With
the puzzle or whatever you had, all these shapes do something. There's that visual piece. If I have to listen to a story, there's too many. I can't.
I would have to listen to it 50 times to be able to have the type, because it needs to be sticky, like memorizing.
But isn't that testing your how you are taking? I mean, to me, it's like, is that really about ADHD, or is that your processing? Like, I can process it from an auditory standpoint without problem, and I still consider that I, have ADHD tendencies in areas. So I don't know why that would be.
So what I would guess is that they're running a battery of tests to triangulate. Not any one test is going to be dispositive about any one thing, tell you the whole truth.
Yeah.
But if you're bad at that test and then you're bad at this other one that's also testing working memory, then that's what that is. You know,
Okay, that makes sense. And
I'll tell you.
So is working memory is very, very weak in people with ADHD.
yeah,
Like,
What I can tell you, well, that means, but maybe not if you also have tendencies of autism where our memory is crazy good.
Right.
So exactly.
What
So
I will
tell you,
help you, but it would help you anyway.
I am on all kinds of social media sites, and I take all, and someone's always like, I've got a test for you. 98% of the people are going to choose the same animal. Which animal do you choose? Naturally, without trying, I never choose the thing that everybody supposedly chooses. Never the number, never the letter, never the animal. Like, my brain naturally hits to other stuff that literally,
or when they do that thing, do you see this first or that first? I'm like, my brain sees both at the same time, girl.
Totally.
Like, how do you not see both at the same time?
Right. So I know that my brain must work differently than others. And because I don't ever I don't know what it's like.
The blue and black dress and the gold and white dress. I could literally look at that and have it go from color to color.
It's very bizarre. Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, basically what it's saying is that we all do it differently. We all do it differently. And that tests really
but you're not special, right?
Say again?
But you're not we all do it differently, but nobody's special.
Nobody's special. We all do it differently and equally the same. We go about it a different way and get to the same result, like Michael said.
And I think there are, like, where we do have deficiencies, the places where we do are more proficient can pull up some of those deficiencies. In fact, at the end of the test, she came in and she's like, you do have mild ADHD. And it's like the places where you did really, really well, like, the reason why you have been more high functioning is because the areas that you did really well pull up some of those areas where you're having those deficiencies. You know, where you
right, and that doesn't even start to address the change of all of us, male or female, the change of how we're of hormones as we get older, which also affects all of the dopamine and all of the stuff that serotonin happening in our brains. Wow. Which I don't want to even open. I'm bringing in a video that will talk.
I'm going to bring that one in. I bet we saw the same one.
We may have.
I almost went with that today. And then I was like, it's too deep. I'm going to go softer with friendship. And then Rudy, you went so deep. This was deep. Diagnosis.
We have about 6 minutes left. So we'll aim towards.
I'll give my little summation. For me, as maybe faulty or antiquated these tests might be, there was nothing more powerful than getting a diagnosis for me, because I could then start working towards something. Before, it was like, what's wrong with me? I don't know what to do. Why do I get so frustrated? Why, there were just a lot of questions, and there was just a lot of kind of angst and anxiety around that. Once, yeah, for sure, a ton of shame. Once I got the diagnosis, it was like, and I think I've heard a lot of people that have had this experience where it's almost like this renaissance, because you kind of go back in time and like relive everything. You're like, oh, everything makes sense now. And you still have challenges, but you're moving forward in a way where there's a lot less shame around it, and you're much more, there's much more self-compassion around it. So it is crazy that these tests are so old, but I think don't let that dissuade you from going in and learning more about your possible neurodiversity.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
I'll chime in. I think that's exactly the point that I wanted to end on, is that these tests, while they're not perfect, and it's like, I don't know, playing darts underwater with a blindfold, but you're still getting some information. And as even more importantly, as even if these tests aren't triangulated exactly the nail on the head, they're giving you the area that it's in. And so you can go find other people who are in that area. Like we have with each other, like we're all late to getting diagnosed, but I know for me, being able to talk to you guys every week has made me have more self-compassion and more compassion for other people, and kind of to take it both to recognize when they're not able to mask, to give them kudos when they are masking, and masking for myself and not masking, all of it, so that we're all trying to do the best. And I appreciate this group, and I appreciate those tests, as imperfect as they are.
Well, it's an interesting thing that you brought in, Rudy, because I was tested with that test, because I remember it when I was younger, for gifted and talented, and I think I'm still trying to. You can't be angry. People do what they do when they know what they know. But when I was a kid being tested for that and thrown in a room with other smart kids to, I don't know, problem solve things just because they wanted our brains busy, what I'm feeling right now is like, if that's the test, still the test that they're using for these other things, because I'm a girl and I didn't show up with some of the same things a boy does, I mean, that's the whole point of this group in many ways. It was missed. So here's this test that people are saying, we're still doing this. We still do it this way. We still do the observation. When my oldest had his gifted and talented test, it was this type of stuff with one of the things he got wrong was that, they asked him a question about a newspaper. And I was like, no, he doesn't know what a newspaper is. He's never had a newspaper in his life. And so that's how old these things are, that they're even some of the questions that they talk about those things don't even exist for our kids. And, but it's essentially the same test. And, but I guess what I'm realizing is what a big miss it was, is if you did give me the frickin' test, you gave it to me. And I definitely tested gifted and back then it was just gifted, now gifted and talented. But how frustrating that if I had been a boy, I may have gotten the right diagnosis at the right time. Wow. But as a girl, I didn't. And so that is something that I'm probably going to have to process a bit. I have some feels.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Well,
bring it home, Rudy.
In closing, what's interesting is they threw us all in the gifted and talented, but what was their diagnosis back then? How did they determine that you were indeed gifted and talented? I don't remember taking a test back then, but I too was in gifted and talented and was allowed to play D&D on 2 days a week when everyone else was doing I don't even know what.
Every state was different.
As a sixth grader. Incredible.
Rudy, every state was different, but more likely than not, it's a similar thing to what the guy did talk about in the video is there's this, what you would almost call objective test that has results, the Bender, blah, blah, blah. And then there's this observation test that's much more subjective. Well, typically, at least in California back in the day, you had to have 3 pieces of evidence. And I think the same is true still here in
Colorado. Yeah, it is in Colorado and New Mexico. Yeah.
Teacher, parent, and tests, or, something like that. So you had test scores that were coming back. You had teachers who were like, I cannot keep, this kid is so active. Active is just a proxy for processing. So this is a kid who's processing a lot and needs more to process.
I think in my case, it was like, this kid will not sit still. I can't have him in my class after lunch because I need time to myself as a teacher. So would you please send him to that gifted and talented group and just have him play D&D a couple days a week? I need time. This guy doesn't sit still. He talks all the time. He's chewing on paper. I don't know what he's doing. But you know what's interesting? So these tests are very important, I think. And they can, as you said, Mike, give us a diagnosis that is so important. And as we talk about these diagnoses, as we become adults and become older and more comfortable with ourselves, we're able to understand, oh, this is how my brain works. And then you're able to say, this is how my brain works.
Boom.
You are comfortable with it, and you're like, look, I need a list. I need a list on that refrigerator, because if I don't see a list, I'll forget dog food every single day until you put a sticky note and I start to see it, and then it's like, okay, I know. But yes, I haven't had I didn't take a test or get a formal diagnosis except from a psychiatric professional who deemed me, someone
fun
who
at parties.
did medication as a special.
Rudy, your job is now to wrap us out with the title of the show, because you were doing so well.
That
now
was
you
amazing.
strayed. So you now to come back, do it again. Come on.
All right,
end with the title.
Well, so this is how our brain works, and we're comfortable with it.
Didn't have the same
Like it.
impact.
Oh my God.
And-
But you can edit. Don't you have editors, Michael? $15 an hour editors
yeah.
that can just
now.
yeah. We should end it there.
Thank you for listening. We appreciate you. This is how our brain works. What about you? Tell us in the comments.
Nice.
If you like this episode of This Is How My Brain Works, please like, subscribe, and share. For more info on today's clip, the hosts, and our podcast, check out the show notes. Thanks for listening.